The tranquility of the Wellspring evening was shattered by the deafening roar of something alien. As the townspeople gazed upward, a fiery streak cut across the sky, ending in an explosive impact just beyond the miller's farm. Jack Sullivan, hanging up his tools in the barn, felt the ground shake under his feet. His military instincts kicked in as he sprinted towards his house. "Sarah, keep the kids inside," he shouted, grabbing his binoculars from the hallway. His wife, already at the window with a worried look, nodded and herded their 2 children away from the glass. Outside, Jack scanned the horizon. A plume of smoke rose ominously, marking the crash site. He wasn't alone. Other townspeople were emerging from their homes, faces etched with confusion and fear. Jim Harding, the local sheriff, was already in his truck, CB radio crackling with voices. "Jack, you seeing this?" Jim called out, pulling up beside him. "Yeah, I'm on it. Let's check it out." "Keep everyone back for now," Jack replied, climbing into the passenger seat. The truck kicked up dust as they sped towards the site. The crash had gouged a massive trench in the earth, at the end of which lay a twisted, smoldering wreck. The alien craft, a jumble of metal and unknown materials, was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. It was clearly designed for space travel, its sleek, dark hull pitted and scorched from the entry burn. "Looks like nobody's going to be greeting us," Jack muttered, examining the wreckage through his binoculars. "Can't tell if there's movement inside." Jim was on the radio, calling it in. "We need emergency services out here at the double, and get a hold of the Air Force. Tell them it's a UFO. No, I ain't drunk." Jack chuckled despite the situation. Jim's blunt manner was grounding in the chaos. As they approached, Jack's combat senses flared. "Hold up, Jim. We don't know if they're friendly. Let me do a sweep first." Jack stepped out of the truck, pulling a flashlight from his belt. The outer hull of the ship was cool enough to touch, a sign that whatever propulsion the aliens used dissipated heat fast. Peering through a breach in the ship's side, he caught sight of alien figures, lifeless, scattered across what appeared to be the command bridge. "They didn't survive the crash," Jack called back to Jim, who was now joined by a few more vehicles from the town, including Pete and Mark, local volunteers from the fire brigade. "Any chance there are more of them?" Pete asked, climbing down from his fire engine. "We need to assume so," Jack replied. "Let's set up a perimeter. Jim, keep the crowd back at a safe distance. Mark, help me secure this area." The group sprang into action, efficiency born of many drills and the occasional wildfire scare. While Mark set up emergency lights around the perimeter, Jack and Jim ventured closer to the craft. "Ever think we'd see something like this, Jack?" Jim whispered, his usual bravado muted by awe and anxiety. "Can't say I did, but we need to be ready for anything." Jack's voice was steady, a calming presence as they assessed the threat level. "Look at this, Jack," Mark called out. They turned to see him pointing at a device on the ground, still intact and humming softly. "Think it's a weapon?" "Could be anything. Don't touch it," Jack instructed, eyeing the device warily. "We don't know what tech they're packing. Could be dangerous." As they continued their inspection, Jack thought about the broader implications. This was no longer just a local incident. It was something that could change the world. And as the de facto leader of this impromptu response team, he felt the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. "All right, let's keep it tight here until the feds show up. They'll have experts for this sort of thing," Jack said, turning to the gathered men, who nodded in agreement. The night air was cool, and the stars twinkled above, indifferent to the earth-shaking events unfolding below. Jack gazed up, wondering if the night sky would ever look the same to him again. The alien ship, a tangled mess of otherworldly metal, lay dormant under the floodlights as emergency crews and the curious eyes of Wellspring's residents encircled it. The perimeter was secure, and the crowd was kept at a safe distance, their murmurs a constant backdrop to the tense scene. Jack, his hands clasped behind his back, watched as a convoy of black SUVs and military vehicles kicked up a cloud of dust on the road leading to the crash site. Colonel Marcus Flint, a stern-faced man with a clipped gray beard, stepped out of the lead vehicle. His gaze swept the area before settling on Jack and Sheriff Jim. With purpose in his stride, he approached them. "Colonel Flint," Jack greeted, extending his hand. "We weren't sure when you'd arrive." "Traffic was lighter than expected," Flint replied dryly, shaking Jack's hand firmly. "Give me the sit rep." Jack nodded to Jim, who handed Flint a tablet loaded with photos and videos they'd taken of the ship and the surrounding area. Local law enforcement and volunteers secured the area. No signs of life inside the craft. Seems like the crew didn't survive the crash. There's something like a black box, intact. We didn't touch it, Jack reported. Flint scrolled through the information, his brow furrowing. What about the townspeople? They're curious, but keeping their distance. We've managed to keep things calm so far, Jim added, his tone respectful but firm. Flint looked up from the tablet, eyeing the gathered crowd behind the cordon. Good. We need to keep it that way. As Flint briefed his team, Jack's attention was drawn to a low, pulsating hum emanating from within the ship. He motioned to Flint, who followed him toward the breach in the hull. The hum grew louder as they approached, vibrating under their feet. Feel that? Jack asked, stopping a few feet from the breach. Flint nodded, signaling 2 of his men to gear up and enter the ship. The soldiers, clad in hazmat suits, stepped cautiously into the alien vessel, their movements slow and deliberate. Inside, the ship was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, all cast in an eerie, pulsating blue light. The soldiers relayed their findings through their helmet cams, the live feed displayed on a portable screen Flint held. Looks like an energy source, still active, one of the soldiers reported, his camera focusing on a glowing orb suspended in the center of a chamber. No weapons visible, but lots of tech we don't understand. Flint's expression was unreadable as he watched the feed. Keep your distance from the orb. Document everything. Back outside, Jack pulled Jim aside. We need to prepare for any outcome. If more of them come looking for this one. Jim nodded, the implication clear. I'll coordinate with local law enforcement, make sure we're ready if things escalate. As the night progressed, the ship's mysteries began to unfold through the lens of the soldiers' cameras. Diagrams of star systems, cryptic symbols, and the layout of what appeared to be settlement plans were among the images sent back. This isn't just a scout ship, it's a colony ship, Flint concluded, his voice grim. They were planning to settle here, Jack. Jack's mind raced. The implications were enormous and terrifying. Not only had Earth been targeted for alien settlement, but the initial wave of settlers might just be the vanguard. We need a plan, Colonel, if they come back in force. Jack trailed off, leaving the unsaid threat hanging between them. Flint turned to Jack, his eyes sharp. Sullivan, I need your expertise. You know guerrilla tactics, you know this terrain. Help us prepare. With a firm nod, Jack accepted the charge. We'll start preparations at dawn. This is our home, and we'll defend it. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the reality of their situation settled over Wellspring. A new day was dawning, and with it, the beginning of an uncertain future. Jack knew one thing for sure. They were not going to give up their home without a fight. The morning sun cast long shadows over the fields surrounding Wellspring, where a tense atmosphere had settled. The townspeople had dispersed to their homes, but the air was thick with unease. Jack Sullivan stood before a large map laid out on a table at the makeshift command center, which had been established in the local community hall. Colonel Flint and a team of military advisors surrounded him, their focus intense as they plotted their next moves. We need to fortify our position and establish communication with other potential landing sites, Flint instructed, pointing to various locations on the map. We're not just defending Wellspring, we're defending Earth. Jack nodded, his mind racing with strategies and contingencies. We'll need to train volunteers. Most folks around here know how to handle a rifle, but fighting off aliens is a whole different game. Across town, Jim Harding was coordinating with local law enforcement and volunteer firemen, setting up roadblocks and checkpoints. Keep your eyes peeled and report anything out of the ordinary, he told the gathered group. We don't know if more are coming, but we need to be prepared for anything. Meanwhile, in the high school gymnasium, Jack had begun organizing training sessions. Volunteers ranging from farmers to teachers gathered, their faces marked with determination. Jack walked among them, assessing their readiness. All right, everyone, listen up. Jack's voice echoed in the large space. We're up against something unknown, but I know this community. I know we're strong and we can hold our ground. We're going to start with basic combat training. Stick to what you know and be ready to adapt. As the volunteers paired up, practicing hand-to-hand combat and tactical maneuvers, Flint approached Jack with an update. We've got intel from the NSA. Satellites picked up additional unidentified objects entering the atmosphere. Looks like your hunch was right. They're sending reinforcements. Jack's jaw tightened. How long do we have? Estimates suggest less than 24 hours before they make landfall. We've alerted all branches of the military. They're mobilizing as we speak. The gravity of the situation was not lost on anyone in the room. The fear was palpable, but so was the resolve to protect their homes and families. In a corner of the gym, a group of engineers and tech enthusiasts, led by local mechanic Danny Rivers, were gathered around the alien device that had been recovered from the crashed ship. "If we can figure out how this thing works, maybe we can find a way to use their technology against them," Danny proposed, his hands deftly working over the components. "Keep me posted, Danny. Anything you can give us could make a difference," Jack encouraged, before returning his attention to the training. As the day progressed, Jack and Flint reviewed satellite imagery and reports from other potential contact points around the globe. It was clear this was not an isolated incident. The threat was global. "Colonel, these aliens seem desperate. If they're fleeing their own planet, they might not be looking for a fight, just a new home," Jack mused, trying to understand the invaders' motives. Flint nodded thoughtfully. "That may be, but our first duty is to protect Earth. We need to establish a dialogue, but prepare for the worst. Your community is the first line of defense." By nightfall, the town of Wellspring had transformed. Barricades and defensive positions were set up at strategic points, and the residents, though anxious, felt a sense of unity and purpose under Jack's leadership. The night sky was eerily quiet as the community braced for what was coming. Jack stood watch, his gaze fixed on the stars, aware that the peace of the night might soon be broken. The future was uncertain, and the threat loomed large, but Jack knew they were ready to stand their ground, come what may. The night remained tense and eerily quiet until the early hours when the first signs of the alien advance appeared in the northeastern sky. A sequence of bright lights, much like a string of stars misplaced in the atmosphere, signaled the beginning of the siege on Wellspring. Jack, standing on the roof of the community center with binoculars, spotted the incoming crafts. "Positions, everyone! It's starting!" he shouted down to the volunteers who were already at their posts, weapons ready. Colonel Flint joined Jack, his face grim as he observed the approaching threat. "We've got 3 crafts, possibly troop carriers. They're moving in fast." Below, in the barricaded streets of Wellspring, the residents-turned-soldiers braced themselves. Jim Harding, alongside other local leaders, coordinated the positions from barricades made of sandbags and repurposed vehicles. The tension was palpable, every eye fixed on the horizon, every ear straining for the sound of the alien craft. The first craft landed with a thunderous roar just outside of town, kicking up a storm of dust and debris. From it, alien soldiers, tall, armored beings with no discernible facial features, began to disembark, moving with unnerving coordination and speed. "Fire!" Jim commanded, as the first volleys from human defenders rang out. The night exploded into chaos, the sound of gunfire mixing with the eerie howls of alien weaponry. Jack directed from above. "Focus on the flanks! Don't let them encircle us!" His voice was steady over the radios, providing a calm command amidst the cacophony. In the midst of the firefight, a group led by Danny Rivers attempted to employ the alien technology they had been studying. They had modified the recovered device to emit a high-frequency pulse, hoping it would disorient the invaders. "Now, Danny!" Jack's order crackled through the radio. Danny activated the device. A high-pitched sound, barely audible to human ears, emanated from the machine. The advancing aliens staggered, clutching at their heads, visibly disoriented by the unfamiliar assault on their senses. "It's working!" Danny exclaimed, a triumphant grin spreading across his face despite the danger. This small victory gave the defenders a crucial advantage, and they pressed forward, pushing the stunned aliens back toward their craft. However, the aliens quickly adapted. Mere minutes later, they donned what appeared to be sonic dampeners, neutralizing the effect of the humans' makeshift weapon. "We need a new plan," Jack murmured, watching the aliens regroup with a renewed push. "Flint, we might have to fall back and rethink our approach." Colonel Flint nodded, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "Agreed. Let's pull everyone back to the secondary line. We'll hold them there while we come up with a better solution." The retreat was organized under cover of smoke grenades, providing the humans a screen to fall back and regroup at the pre-established secondary positions deeper within the town. As dawn broke, Wellspring lay under a tense siege. The aliens had established a perimeter around the town, trapping the human defenders inside. Jack and Flint reviewed their options in what had now become the command bunker. "Any word from the outside?" Jack asked, his face lined with fatigue. Flint shook his head. "Comms are being jammed. We're on our own for now, but this town has shown incredible courage. We'll hold, Jack. We'll hold until we can't." The determination in Flint's voice bolstered Jack's resolve. "Then let's make sure we give them hell until help arrives, or we find another way to beat them." Outside, as the first light of dawn illuminated the battered but unbowed town of Wellspring, the human defenders prepared for the next wave, knowing the real battle had just begun. The siege of Wellspring stretched into its second day, and the relentless pressure from the alien forces tested the resolve of every defender. Despite their initial successes, the humans found themselves consistently outmaneuvered by the technologically superior enemy. The aliens had set up energy shields at key entry points around the town, effectively cutting off any possibility of retreat or reinforcement. Inside the community center, which had become the heart of the town's makeshift fortress, Jack and Colonel Flint pored over satellite images and reports from scouts. The situation looked grim. Food supplies were dwindling, medical supplies were low, and morale was beginning to falter. Jack rubbed his eyes wearily, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. "We can't keep this up much longer, Flint. If we don't break the siege soon, we're going to start losing people to more than just alien fire." Flint nodded solemnly, his eyes scanning the room filled with exhausted faces. "We need a breakthrough, something to turn the tide." At that moment, Danny Rivers burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "Jack, Colonel, you need to see this." He held up a small alien device, its surface pulsing with a soft light. "We figured out how to tweak the frequency of the sonic disruptor. It's more potent now, and we can target their shields directly." Jack's fatigue was swept away by a surge of hope. "Show me." Danny quickly set up the modified device, connecting it to a portable generator. "We boosted its range and intensity. It should be able to disrupt their shield technology long enough for us to mount an offensive." Flint looked skeptical but intrigued. "And you're sure this will work?" "We tested it on a smaller scale. It caused a temporary fault in their shield matrix," Danny explained, his confidence infectious. With no time to lose, Jack made the call. "Prepare for an assault. We'll use Danny's device to open a gap in their shields. That's our window. We push them back hard and fast." The defenders rallied quickly, spurred on by the prospect of a turning point. As they took up positions, Jack addressed the group, his voice clear and commanding. "Today we reclaim our town. Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and we'll push these invaders out." Danny's device was deployed at the front line, hidden behind a row of sandbags. As the alien forces began their next wave of assault, Danny activated the disruptor. A high-frequency wave rippled through the air, and the nearest alien shields flickered and dissolved. "Now!" Jack yelled, signaling the charge. The defenders surged forward, exploiting the gap. The element of surprise was total, and the alien soldiers, momentarily defenseless, were quickly overwhelmed. The battle was fierce and brutal. Jack led from the front, his presence a rallying point for the defenders. They reclaimed block by block, pushing the alien forces back towards their landing zone. However, the aliens adapted quickly, bringing in reinforcements and heavier weaponry. The human advance slowed, then stalled under a hail of alien fire. "We need to keep pushing," Jack shouted over the din of battle, ducking as a beam scorched the wall beside him. Just as it seemed the momentum might shift back to the aliens, a roar filled the air. Reinforcements had arrived, not from the military but from neighboring towns. Armed with whatever they could carry, they charged into the fray, tipping the balance once again in favor of the humans. With renewed vigor and bolstered numbers, the defenders pushed the alien forces back further, exploiting the chaos sown by Danny's device. By late afternoon, the remnants of the alien troops were in full retreat, abandoning their positions around Wellspring. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with streaks of orange and red, the defenders of Wellspring gathered in the town center, battered and bruised but victorious. Jack stood among them, his heart heavy for the lost but full of pride for what they had achieved. "We held," he said simply, meeting the eyes of his fellow townspeople. "We held our ground." The siege was broken, but Jack knew this was only the beginning. The aliens would regroup, and so must the defenders. There would be time to mourn, to rebuild, but first they needed to prepare for the next wave. Whatever it brought, Wellspring was ready. After the harrowing siege and the unexpected victory at Wellspring, Jack Sullivan and his improvised army knew they couldn't rest on their laurels. The alien invaders had been pushed back, but not defeated. As night enveloped the small town, now scarred by battle, plans for a more aggressive counteroffensive began to take shape in the makeshift command center. Colonel Flint, his face grim but determined, addressed the gathered leaders. "The aliens will be regrouping. We've bought some time, but that's all it is, time. We need to hit them before they can hit us again." Jack nodded in agreement. "We've captured some of their technology and vehicles. I say we use it against them." Around him, the room filled with nods of approval and murmurs of assent from weary but resolute faces. Danny Rivers, the mechanic who had become an unlikely hero with his modifications to the alien tech, chimed in. We figured out how to operate some of their smaller crafts. They're not easy to pilot, but they're fast and armed. That's our in, Jack said decisively. We'll take the fight to them. Flint, can your men fly these? Flint turned to a pair of Air Force pilots who had been advising the ground forces. After a brief consultation, he responded, It'll be risky with minimal training, but yes, they believe they can do it. Plans were rapidly drawn up for a daring assault. The objective was clear: target the alien command ships that were still in orbit around Earth. These ships were believed to be coordinating the alien ground forces and would be heavily guarded, but taking them out could cripple the invaders' operational capabilities. The following morning, under a gray, somber sky, Jack, Flint, and a squad of pilots approached the captured alien crafts. These sleek silver vehicles looked otherworldly on the tarmac of the old airfield. Remember, hit fast, hit hard, and don't linger. We might only get one shot at this, Jack briefed his team, his eyes scanning each pilot. We're not just fighting for Wellspring now, we're fighting for Earth. The engines of the alien crafts hummed to life, a low, eerie sound that sent shivers down the spine. One by one, they lifted off, rising smoothly into the morning sky. In space, the human pilots found themselves in a ballet of deadly precision. The alien command ships were indeed well defended, with smaller fighter crafts swarming to protect them. The battle was fierce, with the humans leveraging every bit of their newly acquired alien technology. Lasers and energy projectiles crisscrossed in the void, illuminating the dark cosmos with their deadly dance. Jack, piloting one of the crafts, maneuvered through the chaos with surprising adeptness, his instincts honed by years of military training and recent combat. He targeted the main command ship, launching the full firepower of his craft at its weak points, which Danny had identified from the salvaged alien tech data. With a spectacular explosion, the command ship ruptured, sending shockwaves through the alien fleet. Cheers erupted over the comms from the human pilots, a brief moment of triumph amid the peril. But the battle was not over. Even as the main ship went down, alien fighters regrouped, their attacks intensifying. Jack's voice came through the comms, steady and commanding. Don't let up! Push through to the rally point! The surviving human pilots, with Jack and Flint among them, made a calculated retreat, having inflicted significant damage. Their return to Earth was fraught with tension, the alien fighters harrying them until they re-entered the atmosphere. Back on Earth, the team landed their battered crafts amidst the cheers of their comrades. They had achieved a critical victory, but the cost was high. Several pilots were missing, and the threat of another alien assault loomed large. As they gathered back at the command center, Flint looked over the group, his expression a mix of sorrow and pride. You've all done something incredible today. We've shown them that Earth will not yield. We need to stay vigilant, reinforce our defenses, and keep fighting. Jack, tired but undeterred, added, They know we're a threat now. They'll come back stronger, but so will we. We'll be ready. As the sun set on a world still under the shadow of invasion, the fighters of Wellspring, now defenders of Earth, prepared for the next phase of a war they were determined to win. The days following the counterstrike were a blur of preparation and tension. Humanity had dealt a significant blow to the alien command, but the invaders were far from defeated. Intelligence gathered from the remains of the downed command ship revealed a forthcoming massive assault, the scale of which Earth had not yet seen. Jack Sullivan, now recognized as a global tactical leader, coordinated Earth's defenses from a central command center, hastily established in what remained of an old government facility. Colonel Flint paced beside Jack, his voice urgent as he updated the gathered military leaders from around the world. Satellites have picked up a large formation moving towards Earth. It's now or never. We either stop them here or we don't stop them at all. Jack nodded, his gaze fixed on the large digital map displaying the approaching alien fleet. We've learned a lot from their technology. It's time to use that knowledge. Danny, tell me we're ready. Danny Rivers, standing by a bank of monitors and equipment, gave a confident nod. We've upgraded our defense systems with their tech. The energy shields should hold them long enough for our weapons to do the job. The final battle plan was simple, yet audacious. Utilizing the alien technology, Earth's forces would shield key locations while targeting the invaders with a series of coordinated strikes from air and ground. Civilians had been moved to safe zones, and every able-bodied person had been enlisted to support the effort. As the alien fleet entered Earth's atmosphere, the sky darkened under the shadow of countless ships. Jack watched from command headquarters, his heart pounding with the gravity of what was to come. He issued the final command, his voice resolute through the global comms network. "All units, engage." The battle that ensued was unlike any Earth had ever witnessed. The sky lit up with the exchange of fire from both sides, ground-shaking impacts resonating as alien crafts were struck down, crashing in flames. Humanity's new shields held firm against the onslaught, protecting the cities and key military bases. Jack coordinated the movements, calling out orders, adjusting strategies on the fly as reports came in. Beside him, Flint relayed information, his experienced eyes quickly analyzing the flow of the battle. In the midst of chaos, an opportunity emerged. The main alien battleship, which had hung back initially, now moved into position, likely aiming to deploy a weapon of devastating power. Jack recognized the critical threat immediately. "We need to take out that battleship," Jack declared, pointing to the holographic display. "That's the head of the snake. We cut it off, and the rest will falter." A team of elite pilots, including those who had flown the alien crafts in the previous sortie, were scrambled. Jack gave them a direct line. "This is it. Focus all firepower on that ship. It's now or never." The pilots dove through the chaos, navigating the barrage of alien defenses. Missiles and energy beams crisscrossed the intense battlefield as they approached the massive battleship. The entire world watched, holding its breath, as the small team of fighters made their desperate attack run. With precise hits to critical points learned from the salvaged alien tech, the battleship began to falter. Explosions burst along its hull, internal fires lighting it up from within. Finally, with a tremendous explosion that lit up the sky, the battleship broke apart, its fragments burning as they fell toward the ocean. The destruction of the battleship sent a shockwave through the alien forces. Without their command ship, confusion and disarray spread. Taking advantage of the chaos, Earth's forces pressed on, pushing the invaders back, breaking their lines. As the last of the alien ships retreated, a cheer erupted across the globe. Jack, exhausted, leaned back in his chair, relief washing over him. Beside him, Flint clasped his shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the victory they had achieved together. The battle was over. Earth had survived the onslaught. As peace settled over the command center, Jack looked out at the horizon, the first light of dawn creeping across a sky finally clear of invaders. Humanity had defended its home against overwhelming odds, and while the future was uncertain, the resolve and unity shown by its people promised hope for whatever challenges might come next. In the quiet dawn following the final battle, Jack Sullivan walked through the streets of Wellspring, now forever changed. The town, like countless others across the globe, bore the scars of a fierce conflict. Buildings were pockmarked with debris, and the remnants of alien technology littered the landscape. But the morning was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos that had reigned just hours before. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows over the broken roads, Jack saw groups of townspeople emerging from their homes. They moved slowly, some stopping to embrace, others simply standing and looking around, taking in the sight of their world, spared from annihilation. Jack made his way to the town square, where a makeshift memorial had been set up. Photos of the fallen, candles, and handwritten notes fluttered in the gentle morning breeze. The community gathered, their faces marked with grief, but also with relief and gratitude. They were alive. They had survived. Colonel Flint joined Jack, his uniform still dusty from the command center. "It's over, Jack, but it doesn't feel like it, does it?" Jack shook his head. "No, it doesn't. There's so much to rebuild, so many to mourn. But we stood our ground, Flint. We did what we had to do." The colonel nodded, his eyes taking in the gathered crowd. Humanity showed what it's capable of, not just in terms of fighting, but in coming together. That's going to be what defines us going forward. As the day progressed, Jack helped organize teams to clear debris and restore essential services. The global community was already mobilizing aid and support, but local efforts were vital in the immediate recovery phase. Throughout the day, Jack met with residents, listened to their stories, and shared his own. The community felt closer than ever, united by shared loss and shared triumph. In the afternoon, a service was held for those lost. Jack stood before the town, his heart heavy but his resolve clear. "We've been through darkness, but we stand here together in the light. Each one of us has a role in rebuilding, not just our homes, but our lives. We remember those we've lost, not just in mourning, but by living fully in the peace they helped secure. The crowd listened, many nodding, others wiping away tears. After the service, people lingered, talking softly, some helping to clean up, others just sitting quietly, watching the sunset paint the sky with colors of fire and gold. In the following weeks, Jack continued to lead recovery efforts, not just in Wellspring, but in a broader role as a liaison for global reconstruction efforts. The alien threat had receded, but vigilance remained high. New defense systems were put in place, utilizing salvaged alien technology, and discussions about Earth's future defenses became a priority at the highest levels of government. Jack found himself at the center of these discussions, his experience and leadership undeniable. Yet, whenever possible, he returned to Wellspring, to the heart of the community that had stood firm against the odds. One evening, standing on the outskirts of town, Jack looked up at the stars, now familiar, and yet forever changed in his eyes. The universe was vast, and their place within it was more precarious than they had ever imagined. But they were prepared now, more united than ever. "We'll be ready for whatever comes next," Jack whispered to the stars, a quiet promise not just to himself, but to the world he had fought so fiercely to protect. Earth would heal, and humanity would continue, not just to survive, but to thrive.